What if the peace and love movement of the 1960s hid one of the darkest minds in American history? A man who never pulled the trigger, yet orchestrated one of the most gruesome killing sprees of the 20th century. This is the story of Charles Manson, a cult leader, manipulator, and psychological enigma, whose legacy is soaked in blood and madness. The year was 1969. The world was buzzing with the summer of love's afterglow, but something far more sinister was brewing in California's deserts. Charles Manson, a small-time criminal with a magnetic personality and a dangerous charisma, had built what he called the family. It wasn't a family of blood, but of blind devotion. Mostly young women, runaways, and outcasts, all brainwashed into believing Manson was a messiah. He promised them spiritual freedom, love, and revolution. But behind that promise lay a nightmarish vision he called Helter Skelter, a prophecy of an impending race war, inspired by his twisted interpretation of the Beatles' lyrics. In his delusions, he believed the black community would overthrow white America, but would be too inferior to rule, leaving Manson and his followers to rise as leaders of a new world order. To kickstart this chaos, Manson ordered the murders of innocent people, the most infamous, the Tate-LaBianca murders. On August 8, 1969, Manson sent his followers, including Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to a house in the Hollywood Hills. Their instructions? Kill everyone inside, brutally. 5 people were butchered that night. Among them, Sharon Tate, a rising actress, 8 months pregnant. She begged for the life of her unborn child, but mercy wasn't part of Manson's gospel. The next night, more murders followed. The LaBianca couple was slaughtered in their home. Words like "death to pigs" and "helter skelter" were scrawled in blood on the walls. Manson never killed anyone with his own hands, but he controlled the killers like puppets. So how does a man with no confirmed murders to his name become one of the most infamous figures in criminal history? Charles Manson was a textbook example of malignant narcissism. Experts describe him as manipulative, grandiose, and entirely devoid of empathy. He saw himself as a prophet, a savior. His followers, merely extensions of his will. From a young age, Manson was exposed to instability, rejection, and incarceration. Born to a teenage mother and raised in a series of reform schools, his formative years were defined by abandonment and criminal behavior. He spent more than half of his early life in prison. This background built the foundation for his personality disorders. He showed clear signs of antisocial personality disorder, chronic disregard for others, pathological lying, and a lack of remorse. Narcissistic personality disorder, a grandiose sense of self-importance and a need for admiration. Paranoid delusions, particularly with the helter-skelter theory, where he twisted music and current events into a prophecy centered on himself. Unlike typical serial killers, Manson's weapon wasn't a knife or a gun, it was control. He broke down the identities of his followers, stripped them of their autonomy, and filled the void with his own ideology. To the FBI and behavioral profilers, Manson represented a new and terrifying category of criminal, the charismatic cult leader. Unlike psychopaths who acted alone, he built an ecosystem of murder. His ability to inspire violence through suggestion alone made him infinitely more dangerous than a lone killer. FBI profiles highlighted leader-follower dynamics. Manson used psychological tactics like isolation, repetition, and drug use, particularly LSD, to erode his followers' willpower. Apocalyptic delusions. These weren't just fantasies. They were deeply embedded in his ideology, giving him a holy cause to justify bloodshed. Sexual manipulation. He used sex as a tool of control, further binding his followers to his twisted vision.
That the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to incorporate the incident events from the decision held on December the 1st, 1982, pages 2 through 6.
I I don't have that.
Manson's trial was a media circus. His behavior in court, erratic, smug, and at times violent, only solidified his infamy. He carved an X into his forehead, claiming he had removed himself from your world. His followers did the same. He was sentenced to life in prison and died behind bars in 2017, but his mythos lingers.
Tell me in a sentence who you are.
Nobody. A bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight razor if you get too close to me.
I am nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight razor if you get too close. Charles Manson. That quote captures the chaos, the contradiction, the danger of Manson. He was not a monster in the shadows. He was the monster who smiled in the light, surrounded by flower children. He exploited a generation's search for meaning and twisted it into a cult of death. And while his hands remained clean of blood, his voice commanded slaughter. Charles Manson didn't need to kill, to destroy. His mind was the crime scene, and his legacy, a warning of how charisma, madness, and control can birth horror without a blade ever being raised. If you're brave enough to keep walking down the dark corridor, hit that like button. And subscribe. Don't forget to ring the bell. You never know who might be listening.
At a time.
Is there anything you think you can pass on that society really is missing and that you can tell them about?
Society knows when it wants to know that it's just a jellyfish and it's only controlled by the people who want to move the sheep around. They don't tell them anything. Everybody knows that everybody's lying. Do you know anyone that tells the truth? Can you trust a lawyer? Can't trust a lawyer. You can't trust. Who can you trust? The President, Nixon? The Watergate? Look at where your children are looking at from. Who can they trust?
So you would try to tell parents something about raising children?
I would try to tell the children how to help the parents.